Okay, let's get started. As people join, we will record this meeting. So for anyone in a different time zone or whatever, we'll be able to share this. So welcome. Welcome to HR vs. Virus Hackathon and a weekend of fun. It's snowing in Chicago right now, so we might as well hack, right? We'll see where all of you guys are from. So if you have made it to Slack, if not, please make it in there and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. I think it's really interesting to see where in the world everybody is from. So I wanted to start off just by introducing the organizers a little bit and why HR versus virus, and then give you an overview of sort of the logistics of the hackathon. If you have any questions throughout, please put them in the chat. We won't get to all of them. We have an FAQ in the FAQ channel in Slack, so we'll update it there if we don't get to all of your questions. All right, so who's ready to hack? Okay, we won't take a picture yet. At the end, we can do that. We do usually a freeze frame picture at the end, so we'll do that. So who are we? So as I said, my name is Nicole Desane. A lot of you have gotten emails and messaging from me. I'm the founder of the HR.Hackathon Alliance, where we do live events using design thinking to hack, usually live events, not right now, to hack work-related challenges. We are in 5 cities right now, and after this is all over, we'd like to grow in even more cities. But for the time being, we wanted to experiment with virtual. So I heard from many of you, this is my first hackathon or my first virtual hackathon. Well, it's the first virtual hackathon for us as well. So we have experience doing them live locally, but this is our first time doing this globally and virtually. So, you know, put on your experimentation design thinking hats. Things might not go, you know, as planned all the time. We already heard some moderators wanted to use Mural, and Mural has been down because, you know, all these tools are overloaded these days. So we'll be, you know, we'll have to be flexible with these kind of things. So, and the reason, so my why for why I wanted to do this topic, HR versus virus, is, and I apologize, you might still hear this, I still have some trouble breathing because I actually was infected with COVID-19 myself. I am okay, but I'm still recovering and have some of these lingering breathing issues, which I'm told is normal. So apologies for that. But so that, fortunately, my symptoms also were fairly mild, but it's still a very scary experience. And as I was going through it and was starting to get better, I felt this need to do something even more, right? I think we already all feel maybe out of control and helpless right now, but when you actually got sick from the virus, maybe you feel an even more acute need that you want to do something. So that was sort of my impetus to tackle this topic. And I'm like, you know, I'm not a healthcare worker. I can't help that way, right? We can protect them by not leaving our houses and so forth. But I know the world of work, and we also know that the world of work is impacted by this virus, right? It might not impact people's lives, but certainly it impacts people's livelihoods, right? So that's why I wanted to focus on that. And by the way, there have been other hackathons against the virus over the last few weeks. So as I was sick, I actually was following some of those tweets in Germany. I'm originally from Germany. And there was actually a virus hackathon sponsored by the German government. And they had 40,000 people on all these free channels. So it was massive, right? So, but they just did it for Germany, and they did it very broadly around all kinds of topics, right? So our focus is work related, and I wanted to do it globally because I think it's a global problem that deserves global collaboration for us to solve it, right? So that's a little bit my why, but you know, you can't pull off things like this alone. So I have a co-conspirator in Sandy Castro. Sandy is the executive director of IC Stars, and I'll let Sandy introduce herself. I'll tell a little bit about IC Stars, and then also your why you jumped on board. And you have to unmute yourself, Sandy. Do I have to unmute yourself? I thought I did. Let's see. No, you have to unmute yourself. There we go.
Hey, here I am.
There you are.
Good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to see all your faces. We're going to have the best weekend ever, hacking together from the comfort of our own homes. And like Nicole said, I am the president and co-founder of IC Stars, and we're here in Chicago as well as Milwaukee. And we do technology, leadership, and business training for underserved folks. Young adults, so 20-something-year-olds. In essence, we find talent, we train talent, and we put talent to work. We've been at this for 20 years, and one of the cool things about our boot camp, which is 4 months long, intensive, 12 hours a day, is that not only do we teach technology and systems thinking and programming, but we develop community leaders. And the idea behind it is if we sort of learn IT and how to solve problems and build solutions and get great jobs in IT, why can't we use that same blueprint for solving problems and building solutions in the communities that we come from? So for 20 years, we've been developing leaders. We see huge jumps and increase in pay, and our retention in the industry is over 80%. But the thing that we're super proud of is in our alumni association, we have over 70 homeowners. So people who were receiving public assistance are now homeowners. And that out of IC Stars, over 57 businesses have been started. So people starting businesses and then employing people from the community is super huge. And when Nicole told me about this hackathon, well, first of all, I always say yes to Nicole, whatever she says, because she's brilliant. But I love the idea of this. I think that we are all at home freaking out in different ways and trying to figure out how to make it all work. And I know that I, and like other folks that I've talked to, want to be able to be a part of the solution and to do something and to use our gifts, our brains, and our community to make a difference. So I'm all on board, and IC Stars has definitely submitted a challenge, and we are absolutely geeked out to get your input this weekend and build solutions together. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sandy. And yeah, check out IC Stars. They're an awesome non-for-profit, and what they do is truly life-changing to the people that they serve. Sandy's also, she's very humble. She's one of the most recognized, I would say, leaders in Chicago. So Sandy, high five, high five. Do the virtual, you guys figured out the virtual thumbs up and stuff. I haven't even figured that one out. Okay, so now you're probably all like, okay, what is this all about? You know, I've never done this before, and how does this work? So as I said, some of this we're making up as we go, but but we have some idea and some structure around this. So I wanted to share that. And part of the reason why we have limited structure is because we have these global teams and we have these small teams that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And so I also want to highlight, so we said 72 hours, and some people were like, oh, do I have to be glued to my laptop for 72 hours? No. So I just want to make that very clear. But one of the reasons why we made it the 72 hours is to account for time zone. It's accounting for people need to sleep, people need to eat, people want to spend time to their families. And if it's actually nice out where you are, you might want to go for a walk, right? And all of these life things are okay. Okay, so think of this as if you were working from home, right? And you would do this, but then life goes on as well, right? The only thing that we ask is when you work in your teams, let them know, right? If there's specific time blocks that you can't be there, let your team know, especially your moderators, because you don't want to let your team hanging, right? And you know, if you can't deliver something, let them know. But if you commit to something, follow through. It's just basic, you know, collaboration 101. So I just wanted to preface that because, you know, some people were like, can I, you know, not sleep and eat? No, you may. Okay. Wanted to clarify that. So, but that one of the reasons why we do the 72 hours is to allow for people having other things to do, different time zones and things like that. So roughly how the structure is, and again, it's a very loose structure on purpose. So after this kickoff call, what we'll do is in the announcements channel in Slack. So if you have not gotten on Slack yet, please do. If you haven't gotten a link to join, please ping me or email me, and we'll get you sorted out, because Slack will be our main hub for the big hackathon organization. This is how we communicate mainly with you, and this is how your teams initially form. The teams then might go out and use other collaboration tools, you know, whatever you decide, but Slack will be our main hub. And then for project documentation, Google Docs, and you'll get access to that as well. So we'll post in the announcement channel the challenges that were submitted. So we have 8 awesome challenges, and I think you all will find one that you are really passionate about. So check out that challenge overview that will be posted, and then each challenge has a Slack name that is associated with it. And then search for that Slack name in Slack, and that is the team you'll join. And then you click join and you're in. And then the moderators of each challenge will kick it off together with the challenge steward. So let me talk about the different roles a little bit. So the challenge steward is the person who submitted the challenge, right? So they have thought about something, maybe they've done some initial research, right? So their role is to provide the team with the initial thoughts, context that they had thought about. The moderator is sort of your team captain. They will help you sort of flow through the 3 days and provide some structure. Now, they also do this for the most part the first time, right? So they might not know everything either. So be kind of kind, help each other out. If you have certain skills or ideas, bring them to bear, right? So we really want to create sort of an environment of self-sufficiency. So if you have skills, somebody else doesn't, you know, chime in, say, I know this, I know of this tool, I have this skill, right? So be helpful. And then the last role that we have are mentors. So we have a mentor channel. So you can also search for the mentor channel. And in that channel, we have a list of all the mentors, and there's expert skills that you can tap into. So that might range from crisis communication to sketchnoting to graphic design to coding, right? So I think we have about a list of 20 skills that mentors have. So as you go through your project, you might need certain experts that you might want to interview, or that you might want to consult with, or that might help you with specific things as you design your solution, right? So go into that channel. We also ask the mentors to join some of those channels so they can proactively chime in. So if you see somebody with the sort of display name ment in their name, that's a mentor. If it's mod name, it's a moderator. If it's chal, it's a challenge steward. So that's how you recognize these people. Okay, so that's how it works today. And then today you'll spend probably, you know, first someday finding each other, right? We assume there will be some, I don't want to say chaos, but maybe creative focus finding, or however you want to call it. We don't have that many people. I think we're about 100 or something people, right? So we're not thousands of people, but still there will be some initial maybe confusion and so forth. So expect that, be patient with yourself, be patient with others. So find your teams, and then you'll do a little bit probably of team building with the moderator, but every moderator, you know, might do it slightly different, a little bit of team building, a little bit of understanding where you're coming from, what your skills are, what's your time constraints, things like that, right? So really some project planning or organizing. And then today will probably be spent a lot of time doing research. And so we'll loosely follow the 3 design thinking phases of creating a solution. And the first phase is sometimes called discovery. It's sometimes called ethnographic research. In essence, it's putting yourself in the shoes of your user and clarifying the initial challenge before you solve, right? So, and then loosely tomorrow we'll spend on ideation, and then loosely on Sunday we'll spend on solution design or prototyping. Now it's up to you teams if you want to accelerate any of these phases, maybe because you're thinking about creating an app or a website. I don't know what the solution might be, right? And you think you might need more time than just the last day because the deadline for your video pitch is 6 p.m. on Sunday. you might accelerate some of the previous phases, right? But we just loosely follow those steps. And again, the moderators will sort of launch you through these steps. We do have Google folder, as I said, each of your teams where you are asked to document, sort of work out loud and document your project progress. And that will be the deadline for submission of all of that is by midnight on Sunday. And this is all Central Standard Time because that's our operating base here is Chicago. So we use that as our time, but everything will be documented. Everything will be recorded like this. So if you're in a different time zone, you couldn't catch it live, it will all be available for you, you know, when you get to it. So that's the idea. Yes, and so you might have some questions around solutions. We have that in the FAQ, but I just want to highlight that because people might be curious, you know, what can be a solution? Does that have to be an app or something like that? You know, because I think some people might be nervous. I don't have coding skills or things like that, right? So it can be a digital solution or it can be an analog solution. It really depends on the challenge that you had and the ideas you came up with and the thing that you decided to create a solution around, right? So I think over the next couple of days that will emerge. Today, really, you want to focus more on the research part. So I think I covered sort of the flow. So with that said, I wanted to, so each of these, so we'll have sort of a check-in today. Today is the kickoff call. And then every morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard, we'll do sort of a check-in call, just talk about logistics for the day and, you know, address any main questions or concerns that came up the previous day. So you're set up for success that day. And then what I wanted to do is, because we're also kind of into education as the HR Hackathon Alliance, we educate HR or people who have not traditionally used design thinking a little bit. So I thought we could do a little bit of an education segment, tagging on to each of these calls. And the way I wanted to do that, I don't want to show like a PowerPoint or anything like that. You can read plenty of articles and training on design thinking. But I thought what would be cool is because we have the expertise here with us already, with the mentors and moderators and everybody really, is to do like a little mini sort of interview with somebody who is really deep into this topic. So with that said, and Jeff is already smiling and gearing up because today, today's little mini education segment is then about discovery and research because that's what we'll do today. So we'll do a little bit of an interview back and forth to give you some ideas and tips and inspiration for the discovery phase that you're going to go through today. So Jeff, I asked Jeff to be my interview partner for today because Jeff teaches at Northwestern University, and I actually work for him there in a program called Designing for Organizational Effectiveness, and it's a program where students take a real life project over the course of a year and go through design thinking phases and apply it to organizational change and design. And really, I would say 90% of the year they spend on research activities. Really, the most part is dedicated to research. So Jeff is deep into that topic. So Jeff, welcome. And do you just want to introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll jump in? Okay, why are you, do I have to, I thought I unmuted him. Let's see. There we go.
Hey, there we go. I'm back unmuted. Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. This is a lot of fun, and I always enjoy, as Sandy said, partnering with Nicole on her many ventures here. So maybe just a quick bit of context. So my day job, I'm associate director of a program called the Master's Program in Learning and Organizational Change at Northwestern, where we have a number of courses that use design thinking practices applied to organizational change issues. And I do get to be involved in a couple of those courses. So what I can share here is a little bit of our own experience trying to figure out how to do research and sort of what works why it works, and these kinds of challenges where you're not necessarily building a product, or maybe not really building a service, but trying to affect an organizational change in some way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jeff. So I'm a big fan of asking why. I think my whole life drive my husband crazy. Everything is why. But in design thinking, that's actually a good thing, especially in the discovery phase, which is marked by curiosity. So my first question to you that I want to explore together is, why do we conduct research in design thinking?
So I think there's probably three big outcomes that come out of research that when we do it, what we focus on. And the first you already mentioned early on was to put yourself in the shoes of the people that you're affecting. So understanding the real lived experience of the people that you may be affecting by whatever you're building for, whatever you're creating for, right? And that I think actually is like one of the biggest pieces of design thinking that's really valuable, is that there's this huge focus on empathy and really understanding we call it user experience, but it's the people experience and how they actually experience it. So that really is number one, is like, envisioning who is this person, or who are these people that you're trying to help in some way, and how do they really live the experience that you're trying to affect. The two other things that we found valuable in doing sort of discovery research, because it sort of sets up how you sort of the background for what ideas you might come up with, is one is to explore how other people may have solved similar challenges. So it's a little bit of maybe going out and seeing if there are some practices out there that other people are using that seem effective. Maybe a best practice research, some benchmarking there is valuable. But the other thing is looking for analogous situations. So situations that are maybe similar to what you're trying to solve, but not exactly the same. And then seeing how have they solved the problem. That's where some real innovation can kind of come from. And an example that I could think of would be, let's say you're trying to affect how a project team is going to go work on a very long project, and you want to get them prepared for working on that project. And all right, I'm a kind of a half-baked baseball fan. What could spring training for baseball teach us about preparing for a long season, right? I mean, it's not exactly the same kind of problem, but there might be some things there that they do that inspire some new ideas. So looking for those analogous situations is also a good bit of research. And then the other thing that we do a lot, and I think there's a bit of an art here for having multiple, what I would call, lenses on the challenge. So how you see a challenge is how you're going to solve it. If I see this as a team dynamics issue, I'm going to come up with a team dynamics solution. But if I see it as it's an issue of equity and inclusion, I'm going to come up with a different solution. So a lens is, what does research, or what do different ideas from different disciplines potentially tell us about how we might look at the problem in different ways? And it's good to have multiple ones, because you can sort of literally change your lens and see, wow, if I looked at this as an inclusion problem, I see this. If I look at it as a team development problem, I see this. If it's psychological safety or something, I see this. So the why for me is like that empathy piece, that looking for, analogous situations, and then looking at different lenses that you can look at the problem
Love that. Yeah. And so what is it then at the end that we want to have as an outcome of the research phase? Because it's a jumping point off into ideation, right? So what is it that we want to have?
Yeah, I think that the thing that we found that has been the most valuable, where we springboard into really sort of creative ideas, is that we sort of come up with two things. One is we have a pretty good picture, and sometimes literally a picture, of the human experience, so we can really envision the people that we're trying to affect. And then we have just a lot of stuff in the background about these analogous ideas and different lenses that maybe we don't know exactly how they're going to come to play, but we have a lot of it, and we've thought about a lot of it. That just sort of puts us in a mindset, I think, where we've got more to draw from when we're thinking about potential ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Those two things, I think the human piece, and then
Yep.
just, we've explored different ways of thinking about the problem.
Yeah, and what I like to sometimes do is then to kind of consolidate all that data that you have into sort of what are maybe the top 5 sort of insights or opportunities from all that data that you kind of find out. So you have sort of a jumping off point to ideation. What are your favorite research techniques, Jeff, that you like, and maybe some that are virtual, so they could inspire our teams here today?
Yeah. Well, you know from our work that I love maps. So journey map, drawings, right? Like drawing out a person's experience over a course of time. So you're actually envisioning a person or a couple of different types of people and drawing out like how are they experiencing some moments in time and drawing them out. Those are really valuable because it sort of highlights, it takes away a lot of noise, right, from things, and it highlights sort of key things that are part of the experience by just drawing it out. And they don't have to be fancy drawings. I mean, literally, they can be hand drawn, stick figure kind of things. We've done stuff like this that on on PowerPoint, just using boxes and stuff, or things like Mural work really well for just using Post-it notes and having little Post-it notes be parts of a story. But mapping things out over time is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing is I just do think there's something about stories, and stories can be text, right? It's tell me about a time when this happened to you, or you've experienced this, or give me an example of when this went well, and tell me the story, and give me all the details of the story. So that could be tech. That obviously you can do that in Google Docs. You can do it in Slack. You can do it wherever. But the stories give a real richness to the person's experience. I think those two things in particular are probably the biggest thing that we've seen change the way people think about issues.
Mm-hmm. So experience mapping and stories captured from interviews. Mm-hmm. And so who should be included in research? Who do you recommend, when you do a research project or the research phase that should be included?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, obviously, and this, or maybe this isn't obvious, but I do think it's, you need to include the people who represent the people you're trying to impact with whatever you're trying to design, right? You really want to get into their heads. So obviously they need to be part of it. And I know too often I've done this in the past before. I says, I think I know, what these people are going through. And so we got to go in a room with a bunch of peers and we invent something. And in reality, we have no idea what people are experiencing because we really didn't talk to them deeply enough.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key for me, besides who else needs to be people that you're affecting the change on, is the group of people who you have thinking about the problem. As much diversity as you can add into that, the better you're going to get on it. And diversity could be, somebody who's got technology experience, someone who's got change experience, something who's got marketing experience. It could be disciplinary diversity. It could be background diversity. But the more you get of that, you're going to get people thinking about the problem through their own expertise and experience, and that's going to help you be more creative.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes in design thinking also, I think we interview extremes. So people who are either really good at something or are not, to get a picture of, sometimes we might want to design more for the people who are not good at, so we can make sure it really works. So the extremes that we want to capture.
Yeah, if I can add one thing to that, there's
Yeah.
this concept called positive deviance,
Mm-hmm.
where you look for those people who have had actually success in an environment where very few people have success. It's the same thing. And there's a huge amount of work and research that said that finding those people can give you really insightful clues into how to solve pretty knotty problems.
Mm-hmm. And just one more comment around what you said initially, that, what seems obvious, we should include the people who are affected by this. And I know in HR, sometimes, and that's the whole reason of bringing design thinking to HR, because sometimes historically we have not done that, you know, and I'm still having conversations with people where they're like, yeah, I just realized my employees are my customers, are my end users, and so I should apply some of these things, right? Employee experience is really trendy right now, so people are more moving towards that, but there's still a huge realization going on that employees, leaders might be participants in our research and our co-creation. So for our context here, so it's not always obvious. So it's good to spend some time as a team to really think through who are all the stakeholders affected by your challenge, and then go from there, and then craft your research plan really from there, would you say? Because you might not use all research techniques on the planet, but you might identify who are the people affected. You might narrow it down maybe already, and then sort of think through what is the right research approach to get discovery and information and data from them. Does that make sense?
It absolutely, and I guess I would add, to plus and for that is the empathy thing is just really, really hard. So don't ever beat yourself up for you know, not thinking you are missing something. And it needs to be, we're also finding it absolutely has to be continuous. It can't be a phase that you start and stop and say, okay, I'm done. Because things change, right? You just have to figure out a way to continuously collect stories and listen to people and add that to your empathy database, you know, of understanding. And if you build that muscle, you know, at least you have an approach, I think, that will, you know, lean you in the right direction. But it really needs to be continuous, and it is really, really hard, and you're always going to be surprised, and there's always going to be new versions of this that, you know, people's experience, they're just going to take you off track.
Yeah, and I love that. And so to just close the segment out, so really the mindset you want to inhabit for this phase is curiosity. And I always feel like I'm a fan of Sherlock Holmes. And it's almost like Sherlock Holmes, right? You're looking for clues and you're trying to suspend, which is the hard part, your own biases, your own judgment, but really go about like a detective, trying to find clues about the challenge you're trying to solve. That's how I kind of, you know, try to picture it. And that to me is an analogous example. So Jeff, thank you so much for your insight. Really appreciate it. I hope that was helpful to everybody. And again, this is recorded, so if you want to re-listen to Jeff's wisdom later, you may. But I wanted, if there are any questions, right, any burning questions right now, please put them in the chat. Again, we have an FAQs Slack channel also, where there is an FAQ document which already holds, hopefully, the answers to many of your questions. If you can't find an answer there, you can put your question in that Slack channel and we'll get an answer to you. Okay, so we get some questions that we want to address. So I'd say let's address about 3 or so questions and then we'll finish, because I want to get you guys started on hacking. So, all right. So Barbara is asking Jeff, can you say something about the kinds of questions we want to be asking in this phase? Do I have to unmute yourself again? I didn't mute you. Oh.
Must be just temporary.
Yeah, there you go.
So Barbara, I think so one of the biggest things, so we've been working on this thing where we try and elicit stories from people, and stories are usually based in trying to ask them about a particular moment in time or an experience that they had. So you know, tell me about a time when you had a you know, a real bright spot on a Zoom meeting, right? And then get into the details of the story. So it's eliciting stories. So putting people in asking them a question that puts them in a moment of time in a particular context that you're trying to understand. You know, we've asked questions like, tell me about a time that you you know, had to solve something really quickly with your team. What happened, right? And you find out, like, how do they, you know, organize with the team. So stories, or, you know, things that elicit stories tend to be really good.
Thank you. Adam is asking, can we work on multiple challenges? So that's a great question. My recommendation, we talked about the 72 hours that we have. And with sleeping and breathing and eating and families and things. So my recommendation is you pick one challenge, because you won't be able to work on multiple. It's just too much, So you can try. I mean, I'm not going to forbid anybody to work on multiple challenges, but I think it will be a challenge to be there and committed and help, any given team if you spread yourself too thin. If you feel you can do it, go for it. But I would recommend initially maybe just one. And so again, we have 8 challenges, and we'll post them right after this in the announcements channel. So you can check them out. And then pick one. If you feel you can tackle more than that, go for it. Okay, so it looks like no more questions at this point. That's great. So just again, a quick reminder, Slack is critical. So get into Slack. If make sure you get into Slack. If you haven't gotten a link, reach out to us so we can get you set up. So that's the really key piece. Get into Slack, pick your challenge, join the team, and then you and your small team will take it from there. Just keep an eye out. I would recommend keep Slack up all the time, because we'll communicate through Slack as a main. We'll still communicate through Eventbrite for meeting messages like these kickoff calls, but the main communication, all new resources or anything like that, will be in Slack. So make sure you get in there. Okay, so the last thing we'll do, and if you can turn on your video for that, would be great, because the thing that we always do with these calls in design thinking is sort of a final freeze shot, okay? And we'll use a theme, and then I count to 3, and then you do either a facial gesture or a movement, or you draw something on a post-it note and you hold it up, okay, around a certain theme or topic. So what I'm thinking, what we should do today as a theme for this call is, we are all here gathered around a common purpose, and that is to fight this thing, right? Fight the virus. So I think our kind of gesture thing is fighting, so show your best fighting move. How about that? All right. So I'll count, everybody's laughing. Yeah, so this is, we have a serious thing that we're tackling, right? And we want to get to a solution at the end, but also we want to have fun with this, right? You're spending your weekend, you're volunteering all of your time. Thank you so much for that. I mean, this is awesome that you want to fight the virus on your spare time on your weekend, okay? But we want to have a little bit of fun, so we throw in stuff like that. Okay, so everybody thought about their fighting move? All right, let me get set up here. Okay. So I count to 3, then you do it, and then you hold it for a little bit till I say, okay. All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Awesome. Sandy, do you want to say any closing thoughts or closing words before we start hacking? Oh, why we have this? There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I just want to echo Nicole's comments and the big hearty thanks to everyone. And this is going to be great. We're going to have tons of fun. And I think we're going to take a snowy weekend in Chicago and turn it into something really special. So wherever you are, bring your special gifts and let's have some fun.
All right. Thank you, guys, and see you in Slack. Bye. Happy hacking.
Happy hacking.